Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you are. Welcome to the third session of the SAFI UAE webinar series. Today, we have a very nice program for you. We are going to be exploring all of the different initiatives that have been going on around the world for some time. And so we have an excellent set of speakers today, and it will be an extremely informative and valuable session. I would like to once again thank our sponsors, the General Civil Aviation Authority of the UAE, Etihad Airways, the Boeing Company, and IATA. With that, I would like to move ahead and start with the introduction of the panelists. I will be reading a short bio for each of them. And so first, we have Steve Sonka. Steve is the Executive Director of CAAFI, the Commercial Aviation Alternative Fuels Initiative in the United States of America, which is an industry partnership fostering the development and commercialization of sustainable aviation fuels. Steve is a commercial aviation professional with 34 years of broad, strategic airline and aviation OEM experience, who continues to serve in leadership, steering committee, consultancy, and BOD roles with multiple aviation industry organizations in areas of applying technology and business concepts to enable commercial progression with sustainable aviation fuels. Next, we have Katerina Derkash. Katerina is the Strategy and Sustainability Director at the Green Aviation Research and Development Network in Canada, or GARDN, a nonprofit organization created in 2009 with funding from the Canadian government and the Canadian aerospace industry. GARDN's mandate is to build research clusters that work together to reduce the environmental impacts of air travel. Katerina holds a degree in mechanical engineering and in strategic eco-design. She has experience working with sustainable business strategies in the aviation industry, particularly in the emerging sector of sustainable aviation fuels. Next, we have Pedro. Pedro Scorza is line captain and senior technical advisor for renewable fuels at Gol Airlines in Brazil, and also acts as director of renewables for aviation at UBRA-Bio, the Brazilian Union for Biodiesel and Biokerosene. He is a member of the IATA Sustainability and Environment Advisory Council and of the Brazilian Climate Change Forum. Pedro graduated in business administration from the Catholic University of Rio Grande do Sul and has a master's degree in management from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. And finally, we are hoping to receive Henrik Ermetsa. Henrik, who has a Master of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering, is head of aviation regulations, public affairs at Neste, the leading North European refiner with a refinery with both fossil and biofuel production in Finland and biofuel refineries in Singapore and Rotterdam. Henrik is a member of the APFA, Advanced Biofuel Association CORSIA team, co-chair of the EU Flight Path Program, and a member of the board of AREG, the Aviation Initiative for Renewable Energy in Germany. Henrik, like all of our panelists today, is a true pioneer in the sustainable aviation fuel industry. And so with that, I would like to turn over the floor to Steve, who is the Executive Director of the Commercial Aviation Alternative Fuel Initiative, who will start us off with his presentation. Go ahead, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alejandro. And let me get this pulled up. Okay, thanks for having me. Alejandro set out a good agenda for us to talk about how we got to where we're at, the important things that we're working on, and other observations for the potential to stand up a SAFI activity in the UAE. So we have always paid particular attention to working with our international colleagues, and we're happy to see this activity potentially advancing. I look forward to being able to collaborate more with them as we have with several other of the panel members already. So I'm going to start off by talking about the Commercial Aviation Alternative Fuels Initiative. We're a function that is domiciled in the U.S. primarily because of the U.S. nature of our sponsors. But some of our sponsors actually do have ties to other regions, so I generally say we're focused on efforts in North America in terms of the physical work that we do, but we also do a lot of collaboration with other partners around the world. So we're an aviation coalition. We're established in 2006 to facilitate and promote the development and commercialization of sustainable aviation fuel. Just as a very quick primer for those of you who may be joining this first session or haven't had much exposure to sustainable aviation fuel, what we're talking about is the production of a synthetic kerosene that's a drop-in fuel. It becomes fully drop-in after it's blended with kerosene. It's fully miscible in the system after that. It delivers equivalent safety and performance. We're working hard to make it at comparable cost to conventional jet fuel. It delivers various environmental improvements, primarily with our focus on greenhouse gas reduction from the net life cycle assessment of those supply chains. And also some of our customers or collaborators are interested in improving the supply or the security of energy supply. And fundamentally, CAAFI is a partnership that enables its diverse stakeholders to develop relationships, share data with one another, identify resources for working different kinds of activities, and directing research and some other concepts that we'll talk about. So CAAFI has 4 functional and financial sponsors on both the public and the private side. So I often describe it as a public-private partnership with the aviation industry through Aerospace Industries Association, Airports Council International, and Airlines for America. And then on the public side, the Federal Aviation Administration. I'll also note that their FAA also pursues the development of sustainability concepts, projects, et cetera, through multiple mechanisms in addition to CAAFI. Those include things like the Ascent Center of Excellence, the CLEAN program, and they do a lot of research through their Department of Transportation partner, the Volpe Center. So with respect to the specifics of CAAFI execution and our governance, our day-to-day execution is led by what I refer to as the Office of the Executive Director. That includes me, an Assistant Director, and a Director Emeritus. So 3 of us who are working at different levels. I work in this function full-time. My career is dedicated to the work of CAAFI at this point. Chris Tyndall is our Assistant Director. He works about half-time in efforts with CAAFI. He also participates with some SAF initiatives around the world. And our Director Emeritus is working on some very specific state initiative activities. We have an administrative leadership team, which is comprised of the Office of the Executive Director, the FAA, and Volpe. We function through weekly teleconferences and, quite frankly, nearly daily interactions of that leadership team. We have a steering group that provides advice, consent, and direction. That comes primarily through a monthly telecon that I chair. We review progress and pending activities and establish priorities. That steering group is comprised of 23 personnel that come from our functional sponsors, at least 1 each, from AIA, ACI, A4A, and FAA, leads from each of 4 CAAFI work groups, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then some key collaborators from other federal agencies who also are working in this space, typically more broadly than just aviation fuel, but with bioeconomy concepts in general. We have a CAAFI charter, which outlines how we work, how we operate, our remit, structure, membership, et cetera. goals and objectives. We update that annually or on an as-needed basis with consensus of my office and the steering group. And we try to remain flexible. We know that new opportunities can come along, or unique opportunities can come along at any point. We want to be able to take advantage of those, and we've got a structure that allows us to do that. We're continuously taking needs and ideas from anywhere across our membership, internal or external, and working those into programs. So when CAAFI started out, we had a couple things in mind, one of which was to create working teams to tackle specific issues. And recall that this was in 2006, and we had a different set of specific issues then than we perhaps have now. So we do work through work teams that we establish internally that are directly related to the function of the execution of CAAFI. And then we also do work through some other venues that I'll talk about in a few slides. And those are other public-private partnerships that are additive to the partnership of the CAAFI network itself. So we've got a research and development team, a certification qualification team, sustainability team, and business team. And I think the thing that's important about this is if for any new initiative to be stood up, the team needs to decide where key elements are. I would say, as an example, there's probably no need for a new entity to stand up an independent certification and qualification team, because those activities are being handled very well by the FAA, as an example, and through some other existing things. On the sustainability front, we also have learned a lot in the last decade and a half. I'm not sure that there's a specific need for a broad sustainability team, as opposed to some sort of team effort that might focus on discrete aspects of sustainability associated with unique projects. Just as an example, you'll see that we have, at the time, we didn't define that we needed an R&D team. And that's primarily because that function in the US is being provided through the work of our US Department of Agriculture, our Department of Energy, some activities of the FAA Ascent team, and some others. So again, having the flexibility to establish work teams that are pertinent to the work in your region is clear. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I put these in here for future reference. We've got a CAAFI work team focused on research and development. You can see that it's chaired by 4 individuals. It's facilitated by the leadership team. They focus on industry-specific R&D needs. They publish white papers. We advise agencies with respect to needed activity. We also do a lot of special topic review, but one of the ways that we've morphed the research and development team over the last decade and a half is a large portion of their work now is dedicated to working with very early stage technology companies, people who will subsequently approach ASTM for fuel qualification. And so CAAFI has instituted, in conjunction with the University of Dayton Research Institute, some early fuel pre-screening activities that can help these companies understand the impact of different features of their technology and how easily or difficult that might make their transition through ASTM. So teams doing a lot of good work in that region, still a lot of effort to go. The pipeline of future companies and technologies looks very attractive. So this team is doing a lot of great work at present. Certification qualification team led by the FAA New England Certification Office, and Mark Rumma's in there, and assisted with quite a few other activities. The operating rhythm for the work of this team is excellent right now through efforts led by Mark, his position as a member of the ASTM D02J subcommittee that focuses on alternative fuels for aviation, the rhythm associated with ASTM, the rhythm associated with CRC, the Coordinating Research Council, where different research activities are undertaken, all designed to facilitate certification and qualification, and a few other elements there. I will note that there's a good tie between Mark's work and the effort of the FAA to also establish a clearinghouse designed to be a one-stop shop for potential fuel producers to work their way through the fuel qualification process, and that's another key feature of that work team. On the sustainability side, I think, as I said, the need here is much less. We've got, with the advancement of all the concepts over the last decade via the UN Sustainability Development Mechanisms and other bodies, commercial entities who work in this space, and being broadly addressed under individual policy mechanisms like CORSIA, or in our case in the US, both federal and state policy. There's not as much need for this activity at present, in my view, but I can see that in different environments, different countries, there may still be a lot of questions about our ability to produce these fuels sustainably, so there may be a need. And then on the business side, the focus here has changed a lot over the last decade and a half, and our focus now is honestly working with individual producers and the commercial entities that are helping them with finance and utilizing CAAFI resources to assist with offtake development agreement and some early stage business development, supply chain analysis, etc. So those are the 4 CAAFI work teams. Just make a few statements on what CAAFI is and isn't. We are an initiative. It functions similar to public-private partnerships. Our members are simply committed to working toward a common goal. It's a very open relationship in that regard. We're open to any collaborator who commits to engage with the broader body on sustainable aviation fuel development. So our participation is broad and voluntary. We are not a participant-funded organization. Participation in CAAFI is free. The way that we've set ourselves up is we don't have significant oversight, administration, or finance functions to keep the administrative burden as low as possible, keep our cost to a minimum, and allow us to focus on working with the industry to help them address their needs. CAAFI-specific activities are designed to be break-even on cost, so we seek no profit. And if we don't actually break even, our sponsors pick up incremental costs. And so we work to try to minimize that incremental support from our sponsors, our organizational sponsors, by using industry sponsorship of some of our events. I mentioned before that some of the efforts that we work on are funded by public-private partnerships between CAAFI and various federal agencies. And the reason that we do this is that those other federal agencies are typically working on their own agendas and have resources assigned to them. And we just simply try to leverage those interests which coincide with our own. And typically we do this by a rather simple memo of understanding, is that several organizations band together under a set of common principles to try to achieve certain goals. CAAFI performs no lobbying or policy advocacy. Because we do have a federal sponsor, we're actually prevented from lobbying because that would represent the one federal agency trying to influence another. So we don't do any work. That's perhaps a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing from not having to do it, perhaps a curse by not being able to get involved and try to reach consensus amongst multiple activities, et cetera. So there's pros and cons to the way that we're set up. It's just the nature of what we do. This is how CAAFI works, is bringing these multiple work teams and PPPs together. That represents about 1,200 individuals from around the world. We currently have about 23 aircraft engine and subsystem OEMs, about 55 US government agencies, 67 universities, 35 fuel users, suppliers, 54 fuel producers and technology providers, and we have representation from 73 countries around the world on 5 continents. This is a description of the breadth of activities that we're involved with. It shows some of the individual activities from the different agencies involved in the middle of the page in the gray blocks. We count 9 federal agencies as our partners, and they help us in executing things from Farm to Fly 2, just instituted a new Biomass Research and Development Board interagency work group, put together a federal alternative jet fuel R&D strategy, et cetera. So broad range of activities. We coordinate internationally, like I referred to before. We've had some engagement with all of these entities over the last several years. Finally, key challenges. My recommendation is for any new entity to create structures and oversight that allow the function to be nimble. Utilize public agency resources where they're available. If you don't have those resources available, clearly a different structure than CAAFI should be considered. The SAF community recognizes that we should all work together to enhance communications about what we're doing. There's still a lot of people in the world who have no idea that there's such a thing as a synthetic jet fuel. We could stand to improve on worldwide coordination on policy advocacy and engagement, but that's difficult because we work in so many different environments. We need to also determine how to capture value from environmental services, tailpipe emissions reductions, economic activity increases to improve the value proposition of SAF. So I encourage people to be thinking broadly about that aspect of things as they put their teams together. As I've said before, there's try to stay focused on the opportunities and needs that exist today. Try not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. Let's not look for 2050 solutions tomorrow. Let them come in their own time, et cetera. And lastly, there's no need to duplicate some efforts that have already been engaged in. And then there's several areas where clearly there could be more support, like for additional clearinghouse support, this effort on R&D, for instance, on commercial scale renewable power that might be an enabler for PTL fuels or the specific R&D that goes along with some of those technologies. So those are just some examples. There's more than enough opportunities to shake a stick at, and happy to be a future collaborator with SAFI UAE if that does indeed get stood up, and allowing you to leverage on everything that we've done. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think that you've laid out an excellent groundwork for our discussion. CAAFI is, without a doubt, one of the true pioneers in this space, in the initiative space. And so we're very thankful for your contribution and for lending your time and expertise on this subject. Thank you very much.
Happy to do it.
We're now moving on, and so we are going to move from the US to just north of the border, this case to Canada. And so please, Catalina, can you go ahead? Thank you.
Yes, can you see my screen now? Perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this panel. Super happy to be here. Before I start, please take note that there is no really a properly established SAF initiative in Canada. Over the last years, GARDN have done a lot of background work to make it eventually happen. So I will be talking in regards to this, but the real initiative is still to come. So without further ado, just a few words about GARDN. So GARDN was established 10 years ago as a collaborative R&D network between aerospace industry and federal government to decrease the emissions of air travel. So basically what we do is we facilitate, create a space and the context to connect many diverse group of stakeholders with each other to innovate in a collaborative manner with attempt to make air travel sustainable. So after our network had 35 research projects with teams like aircraft configuration, noise reduction, electric aircraft, engine emissions, and also SAF. And starting here, we'll obviously only talk about SAF. Note that Canada has few initiatives. I will not address them all. I will only talk about where GARDN was involved directly. Obviously, we have started our portfolio with R&D projects. And you can see here 5 of them. Those SAF projects made us realize some significant and successful things like the world's first flight on 100% drop-in fuel, Canada's first SAF-powered revenue flight was 50% blend, and the first introduction of SAF in the hydrant system of the airport. This helped us the most to see a fair distribution of the projects through the supply chain, so we gained a little bit more knowledge, which was very helpful for us for the next stages, like you will see. And already here at this point, we have realized that it's a very complex sector. It's a very also novel culture and a specific dynamic, innovation dynamic, and it's also changing really fast and constantly. In 2008, we signed a contract with Natural Resources Canada. So the idea was to launch a challenge, a pan-Canadian challenge, with the objective to develop a Canada-made drop-in fuel with the best environmental and economic and social portfolio, basically. So starting with this challenge, this is where we really started to diversify a little bit more our SAF portfolio. As one of the projects that we have created for this was the establishment of a SAF community online platform. So I invite you all to check it out. For you, it's open to Canada. The main idea was Canada, but it's open to the worldwide. And it basically aims to facilitate the community members and exchange their ideas, opinions, and expertise through the engagement in different discussion groups and all of this. So you can imagine it as a Facebook, but specifically for SAF stakeholders. After that, we have collaborated with Environment Canada to produce a SAF white paper and what it actually means, where we are exactly in Canada and what we foresee for the future. And here we had like 6 main strategic areas that we call our main chapters, where we went a little bit more in details on the outreach, financing, policy, certification, RD&D, and consortia. And this was where we, for the first time, have introduced the integrated concept of SAFI Canada and what it could look like, what are the guiding principles. And so this became our kind of baseline to continue the engagement process with our community along all strategic areas simultaneously. So if I go now into managing a SAF initiative and the governance structure, well, as I was saying previously, a fully operational initiative in Canada doesn't exist yet. So this section is mostly focused on various principles and inspirations that we are using currently to develop this kind of initiative. So first of all, I think most of the management and governance questions are already kind of in the name. When we talk about fuel, we talk about energy. It's important to understand here it's not only oil and petroleum companies. We're talking about energy, including transportation, infrastructure, and obviously the clean fuel producers. When we talk about the aviation, we're mainly talking about customer, but once again, it's not only airlines, it's basically everyone who is interested or could potentially be interested into buying some SAF. Things getting a little bit more complicated and misunderstood when we get to the sustainable part, because what is actually sustainable even mean? Is it the 20% reduction into greenhouse gas emissions? Is it the happiness of the people, or is it the CRCIA, for instance? So I would like to kind of resume a little bit where how do we think internally about the sustainability? So what sustainable means and our society considers sustainable is actually a very changing concept, especially during the time of crisis like we are in now, in one right now. And this is the visual representation of sustainability that talks personally to me a little bit more than the one we have with the equal circles that were circulating since the 70s. At the first we have physics, we have what we call the natural laws of our planet and how our planet works. It's a closed box with many environmental boundaries that could not be compromised. Our understanding of this limit is actually changing because we have more and more research and data of what it actually represents. And obviously how it's not going in a promising direction to us. Those limits are smaller and smaller with more research that is coming. After you have people who simply strive to live in a desirable society based on their values. Once again, this is also changing fast, especially during crisis. What we consider today being sustainable will probably not be sustainable in 10 years. And what exactly will be sustainable in 10 years? I don't believe we can properly say it at this point. So the idea why I'm saying all of this is, well, actually, finally, you also have money. And we often mistake the main business decision criteria in the sustainability because money, it's only a tool. We have created economy. So we don't forget that this tool could be highly flexible and adaptable to achieve our overall sustainability objectives in the long run. So I believe this is important to truly integrate all the aspects of sustainability in the vision of initiative like SAFI and be very sensitive to its very changing nature to remain resilient, adaptable, and flexible in the long run. So basically, this is why we really focusing on how to create relationship in between those different strategic areas and ensures this flexibility on the long term. And obviously, it's even more complex than that. There is there is a lot of different stakeholders gravitating around making a sustainable SAF initiative. And the idea here is to already map, first of all, what are those existing links, what are the missing links, and what kind of strategy we can put together to create this whole ecosystem together. So, like I was saying, we don't really have a governance and imaging for SAFI Canada because SAFI Canada doesn't exist. But with our GARDN experience in what we have done so far, I will share with you a little bit what I like to call a cheat sheet, what the things we are thinking about when we want to establish this. So the main things here, which are true for management and for the governance, it's to truly establish in collaboration the community, the why, what, and how of what you're doing. Ensure strong outreach, engagement, communication of the network's culture and action plan. You want to be sure that everybody knows what you're doing and why you're doing it. And integrate strong sustainability framework in the network's activities and decision-making process. And I remind you, this is a very changing concept that evolves all the time. Sorry for that. And after, for the management side, well, it's kind of like a small bullets point, a reminder for ourselves. So we want to ensure leveraging existing knowledge and efforts. There is a lot of work that have been done around the world and in each specific countries. So there's a proper effort to reunite and know what is happening and create this network to network approach, where we basically don't reproduce the same things over and over and the same problems. Because it's a very changing sector, we want to think in terms of flexibility, resilience, and adaptability. And obviously, I'm in love with the CAAFI concept because I think they do integrate this in their management. But we also want to define, diversify a little bit more our financing for our operations, and also consider a little bit more novel management structures like sociocracy or a teal organization for those who are familiar with this. On the governance structure, well, we really need to be creative and think about membership in the governance structure. I really love the no fees for the membership because it creates a very inclusive initiative that I believe that's what you want to have. But you also need to deeply know each category or section of your stakeholders, what exactly they need, what they want, and how do they see the future. And in the governance, well, you want to think in terms of diversity, independence, and transparency. So think in terms of different groups, like Steve was presenting as well, working groups, scientific committees, for different concepts that are and needs that are evolving with the network all the time. And the last point is, don't design the network for a specific program. This is something we have learned with GARDN. GARDN was designed for a specific program, and for us, it's a lesson learned. Design an initiative and after tied it with all different programs that are there. It's easier, trust me. So when we go to the stakeholders engagement, I will go really fast into what we have done, what was working for us, and where we are right now. So giving a little bit of a carrot to your community while you do your engagement process, it's helping. So doing free events, for example, or doing some feasibility studies. So what we have decided last year, we've launched a bioport feasibility study for one of the major Canadian airports. The one that won the RFP was the Airport of Vancouver. So it's a consortium that basically is trying to understand and create the regional supply chain of what could potentially become integrated production and use of SAF in this region. After we have collaborated with RSB, Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials, to a little bit better understand the standards of sustainability and what kind of services and added value we can offer to our community to make sure that all the fuels that they're thinking about and thinking to produce in future years are actually sustainable and will be sustainable in the longer run. And obviously on the connection side, what we have done is we integrated everything I've explained to you until now, and we did what we call the co-creation workshops. So we basically give to our community where we are and ask them what are we supposed to do after. And this helped perfectly. Like you see, it was in the image here, many ideas, many different things, but this helped us to create a really good relationship with our community. And we also was planning to do a pan-Canadian conference that is unfortunately was postponed due to COVID, but we'll hope to do it in the upcoming months still. So here what you can see, it's basically the result of everything I've explained, but more in a tight version of what is the vision. So how we decided to do it, it's to separate into federal acts, federal scope and the provincial scope, and to create links in between both. So basically our goal is to continue strengthening the SAF sector in Canada to decarbonize air travel, and also establish the regional supply chains or bioports around main demand centers. So this is an example target that we still need to be rectified with everything that happened with COVID. But the idea here was to align ourselves with some kind of international objectives and basically create a link into production and use. So make sure that the fuel is produced, and in the other hand, make sure that it's actually bought. And what you want to hear is to maximize every region, its contribution to the overall goal. And the strategy, no surprises, it's go around our strategic areas that we were talking previously. And we are still continuing to developing this in more and more details, what exactly it means, and linking it with the different programs at the federal and provincial levels. So that was for the engagement. And now for the best practices and initiative working on SAF, I will kind of use it as a conclusion in the same time. And a little bit, I like to introduce it with the tree, because we always talk about fruits and what is their unresolved, the impact, but we always forget what is the roots and the structure. So how I see it from our perspective, that I like to see the roots first to verify the good health and that it's properly gonna growing, see the structure, and after leaves. So what do I consider as the roots? It's a really engagement and knowledge transfer. You want to have a really good outreach. You want to have business and public relationship. You want to have a lot of studies, and knowledge transfer is really important here. And really explore more innovative tools for community management and engagement. After, you want to have a really solid structure foundation. So you want to have a solid vision and systemic design. So here I invite to think in terms of tools like circular economy, industrial symbiosis, business innovation, various true sustainability, strong sustainability services, and also, like we were saying, creating workshops, different think tanks and strategic groups. And finally, the overall purpose of all of this is to really encourage more collaboration and innovation. So we will be talking a lot about public-private partnership, open system innovation, regional initiatives, because it has a potential to actually reduce even more the environmental benefits, but also decrease the increase the environmental benefits and increase the social benefits as well. So that's also why we're very interested in more regional initiatives as well in Canada. With this, I will conclude here, and I will be more than happy to address the question in the end as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katarina. I think you've given us an incredible overview of the efforts in Canada and of a number of very important lessons learned and challenges that you faced. And it's been a great presentation. Thank you very much. We're now going to stay in the American continent, but move to the Southern Hemisphere. And we have with us Pedro Scorza, as I mentioned, and he's been at the forefront of the effort for the production of sustainable aviation fuel in Brazil for many, many years. And so we are very fortunate to have Pedro with us. And so Pedro, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. Welcome to everybody. Thanks for the invitation. Well, I would like to present a little bit UBRABIO. UBRABIO is the entity 14 years old in Brazil that represents the production of biofuels, biodiesel in Brazil. In 2011, the association decided to open the scope and include biojet fuel, initially biokerosene as in the concept, to develop this new industry in Brazil. Since 2011, we've been working together with UBRABIO, Go Airlines and other partners to start this new industry here in Brazil. So as we believe, we have good conditions, have biofuels culture, you have agricultural biomass available, and we have the habit of using biofuels day by day operations on ground transport. So we understand we have all the conditions, but we need to develop some specific points to make it real in Brazil. So, and the association acts like a connection between the government and the society. We really do advocacy, policy advocacy, trying to merge the interests of the biofuel producers and the society for a less or a decarbonized future. Today, we'll just highlight 3 movements that we are all working on that. So the current state of the new National Biofuels Act that we have in Brazil, it started 2 years ago, and the discussions for a new act for advanced fuels and regulatory act for sustainable aviation fuels, specific for aviation. So the new law in Brazil that we work together in developing this concept of RenovaBio. This law initially, since 1970, you have a policy specific for ethanol. From 2000, we had a policy specific for biodiesel. But what we understood that we need a policy that would work as an umbrella for all bioenergy available or biofuels available in the market, and to be open enough to support the development of the new sectors. So this law is based on a concept of giving a target of emissions reductions, a national target, building this target. This target will be shared to the fuel distributors. In Brazil, we have a structure that all the fuel must be passed through, the fuel distributor company. So we can, we have a vision of all the consumption in Brazil. And in the other side, we have a second axis that bases the law. It's a certification of biofuels productions based on LCA, and this analysis will rank the efficiency node of each biofuel producers. If you are more efficient, you have a better node. You have less efficiency, it's our technology, you have a worse node. So working on that, better, less CO2, better node. And this node will make them able to sell a decarbonization credit that's equivalent to 1 ton of CO2 equivalent in the market. It's market driven, and all the credits are being sold in the Brazilian stock market. So the fuel distributors must buy enough credits to meet the emissions reductions target. And if they don't do, they would receive some penalizations or sanctions. And the value will come back for the biofuel producers, giving them more competitivity comparing to the fossil fuel. So just detailing a little bit, today we have, in 2020, we have the 10 years ahead CO2 index reduction of the Brazilian fuel metrics. We would reach around 60 grams for megajoule, 10.1% less than today in 2018. And the actual target, Brazilian target, is 29 million tons of CO2 to reduce, to seek this target in 2020. So the reduction around 1% of the emissions result mainly 29 million tons of CO2. This target is valid, and the biofuels distributors are working to meet them. By the other side, we had in the last 1 year and a half, when the new law started, the new law, 222 biofuel producers certified to sell credits, and we have enough stock of credits available to be traded on the system. In the second axis is the RenovaCalc or the certifications of the biofuel productions. It's, as I said, it's based on more energy with less CO2, better score, and more credits you can sell. The opposite is worst. And the system, the RenovaCalc system has 9 routes available for certification. Additional routes can be required and should be developed in around 3 or 4 months. So if you want to get in the system and you need a specific route for certifications, you ask the committee and the route to be developed. So today we basically have biodiesel from soybeans, HEFA from soybeans that would be allow us to find biojet fuel, biomethane and ethanol from first and second generations. So the scope is flexible. You can open the scope and meet the needs of any new routes. And the third axis is the decarbonization credits itself. It's based on the invoice of the biofuel sold by a biofuel producer or importer. It generates additional income to the biofuel producers, so it's generating a better competitivity for the biofuels. And the credits are traded in the Brazilian Stock Exchange since April this year. The last quotations was around 20 Brazilian reais. It's almost $4 each ton of CO2. So this value is much lower than the initially expected. The initial modeling would be around $10 to $12 for the first year. And the initial perception is that with the economic crisis and the reductions of demand of the energy in Brazil, the fuel suppliers maybe would have less difficulty to reach the target that was defined last year. So we understand it's not, for now, it's not a failure of the new law, but it's temporarily specific conditions regarding the COVID-19 in the economy. So next years, we will see the real development of the policy where in our view, saying that 2020 is quite lost in terms of value. We will have this year as much more as a testing and training for the new market. So we also have a discussion for a new act for advanced fuels. We understand production of green diesel would help a lot. New industry or new companies to be installing or upgrading in Brazil, and some of the process that lead you to green diesel would lead you to SAF, and the diesel market in Brazil is 10 times larger than the SAF market, the kerosene market, jet aviation fuel market in Brazil. So we understand one green diesel would push jet fuel in Brazil. So we started the discussions with the ground transport to maybe to open the mandate, to expand the mandate, including green diesel together with biodiesel and fossil fuel. That it's on discussion now, and give them the real predictability of a future of, if you have a mandate growing up in the next years, you have predictability for the new industry, and you can give us, and it will let us to have jet fuel also together. And the last item is that we still discussing a regulatory act specifically for sustainable aviation fuels. It passed through the National Senate, and now it's on the Chamber of Deputies. The discussion is still open, and it's moving a little bit slower than we aimed initially. But we see an opportunity to create a specific environment to develop SAF in Brazil. So we have these three different initiatives running on now in Brazil. This is my last slide. I'm gonna left this presentation with an hyperlink for a video that would show to people interested that one of the example of a project being developed in Minas Gerais in Brazil. That's a kind of the projects we are developing here for SAF. So I'd like to thank you for your time, and I give the floor back to Alejandro.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I think that the Brazilian experience is very interesting. Brazil has had, a position of world leader in terms of biofuels for many, many years. And I think that, understanding how you and how the Brazilian government has progressed putting together these market mechanisms to push the industry forward is a very good example that we all need to consider. So thank you very much for your presentation. We can now move to the last presentation of the afternoon or the morning, wherever you are. We have with us Hendrik, and so Hendrik, I'll pass the floor on to you. Hopefully we're able to see your slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Do you see my screen? Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting Eric to this panel. In my day-to-day life, I'm working for Neste, which is the largest SAF and renewable diesel producer in the world. But here I am as the board member of AREC, the Aviation Initiative for Renewable Energy in Germany. AREC was established in 2011, and we are now having 32 members. At the moment, only DHL is an airline member. They are a very active cargo airline. But we are having a lot of equipment manufacturers like Airbus and MTU, a lot of research facilities, universities, and a lot of fuel producers, SAF producers. We are also having a few airports as our members, and a few of the individual states. Germany is a federal republic, and some of the individual states are our members. Our organization structure is that we are having a general meeting twice a year, and then we are having an advisory council, which is also having its meeting twice a year. That's consisting mainly of senior members of the industry and also senior political representatives. Then we have the executive board, where I am a member. We're having 5 members in the board. The head office is in Berlin. Then we are having a few committees and working groups. There's the coordinating committee, which is consisting of the executive board and the working group chairs. And then we are having 4 working groups. They are the feedstock and fuel technology working group, the sustainability working group, and the fuel utilization and quality certification working group. And then we are having a working group that we are calling a task force. That's the task force for economy and production. All the AREC members are working together in these working groups. And additionally, we are organizing development projects like the Demo SPK project, which was just finalized 18 months ago, where we, for the first time in the world, made research on blending of multiple different SAF qualities. And by the way, there's no difficulties and no problems blending those different qualities. And then one of the programs that we have had is the roadmap for SAF in Germany. I will speak a bit more on that on the following pages. Our goals until 2025, which is, by the way, very, very soon, are listed here. For the first, our goal is aligned with the IATA goal of having 2% of blending obligation in Germany. So I'm having stress on the word obligation. So we really see that without an obligation, there's not this 2% cannot be achieved. Then we want to establish a PTL demonstration center or research center in Germany, including a demonstration production plant of 10 to 15 kilotons per year. So that's for industrialization. And then our goal is also to establish or to help establishing an operation of a bio-based SAF plant in Germany, which is at the moment not existing. Talking about the fuel amount that we need, only for the domestic flying, we would need by 2030 200 to 400 kilotons of fuel. That's based on the assumption that that out of the 40% of greenhouse gas reduction in the domestic traffic, half would come from SAF. And already a few years ago, we really recognized that that the production levels in the world are far too low to reach these numbers, and we understood that only an obligation is going to bring the market to a situation where needed volumes are really both produced and consumed. If we think about the European air traffic, so intra-European air traffic, so the pre-COVID estimate was that by 2050, the total fuel consumption in the business as usual scenario would have been 42 million metric tons. And roughly 40% of that, or 18% of that, could be potentially saved by more efficient aircraft and operational improvements, and roughly 60% or 24 million tons would need to come from sustainable aviation fuels. So 24 million tons, which is a bit more than the total biofuel consumption at the moment in Europe. The challenge at the moment, as we all know, is the pricing situation or market readiness situation. If the fossil kerosene is in the range of hundreds of dollars or euros per ton, then the different types, different kinds or qualities of SAF are a multiple of that. And this is why we are thinking that an obligation, a regulatory obligation, is the only way forward. And for this to happen, Eric has created a roadmap to make that happen. The roadmap has 4 pillars. One of the pillars is R&D. So obviously we need to develop both the aircraft and especially the fuels from our perspective. And as we are in Germany, the power to liquids technology is one of the most important future technologies in there. Then we have the implementation pillar, where we have the construction and operation of SAF facilities in Germany, the PTL demonstration plant, but also as an important factor, an import of SAF into Germany, because we recognize that not all the needed SAF can be produced domestically. Then the third pillar is the regulatory pillar. I already mentioned that one of the goals is to have 2% of greenhouse gas reduction by 2022. So that is one of the regulatory goals. And then as we continue, then in 2030, our goal is to have a 10% of obligation in the intra-European kerosene sales. And for PTL, we see that a sub-quota within that greenhouse gas reduction obligation for PTL would be the best way to support the uptake of PTL, which at the moment is much more expensive than the bio-based biojet. Then the fourth pillar are supporting measures where we distribute information to the politicians, to the public, and so on, of course, in collaboration with NGOs. The best person for you to contact is our Managing Director, Melanie Form. But of course, you can always also send your questions to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Henrik. I think that it gives a very clear idea of what ERIG is doing, how the European market is looking at the challenge of sustainable aviation fuels. And so we've had a very interesting and broad perspective from many of the initiatives that are undergoing or that are underway around the world. And we still have a few minutes left for a session of discussion and Q&A. And so I'd like to start off this session. I mean, there were a lot of very interesting points that were made by each of you. I think that one of the central points was this idea of collaboration, these public-private partnerships, how to establish or how to go about creating the necessary inertia so that SAF can be understood and can be produced is I think a major challenge, and I think that this is what most of these initiatives are trying to do. So you know, I know that many of you listed the challenges that you have seen and what you think are the best practices. But you know, I guess taking a page of the moment that we're living on right now, there's been I guess a question that has been lingering in the sense that what's going to happen to sustainability efforts for the aviation industry given what we're living right now, right? Given the COVID-19 and the decimation of the industry. In our first session, we had Robert Boyd from IATA who presented this graph that we have never seen in the aviation industry in its history, right? And so how do we come to grips with this question of survivability versus sustainability? Obviously, in my view, they're intertwined, and if we are to move forward, we need to be sustainable as an industry. But I'd like to hear from each of you, a short, I guess, your take on how you see this, the survivability versus sustainability issue from your perspectives. And perhaps we'll follow the same order. So Steve, can you please start us off?
Sure, thanks. So I'm not sure how much we need to be concerned about the specific linkage today. I think the aviation industry will return and thrive based on its merits. And that's the value proposition of aviation generally. It's rather unprecedented in what it does, employment, total gross domestic product worldwide, high-speed efficient travel, et cetera. and I don't think, my own personal opinion is that sustainability is not a go, no-go kind of scenario today, that a given level of sustainability stops the value proposition of any industry. So, you know, I believe the aviation industry will return to some semblance of normal based on its value proposition. And I think then we will continue our journey of sustainability. And that's the way I actually look at sustainability. Yes, I agree with Katarina's comments that, you know, it's changing significantly, and that's fine. Our journey will change as a result of that. But in terms of, you know, a go, no go, or some other kind of very firm criteria that without an enhanced level of sustainability, aviation can't return, I think that's not reasonable. I don't think any other place in society operates that way. I think we just establish the journey. The journey can change as we go. We can, you know, meet those challenges just like we have in the past with issues around noise, criteria pollutants, et cetera. Those are sustainability issues too. So we've stepped up to meet those. We'll step up to meet what comes at us. And I'm fully convinced that SAF will be part of that picture. The airlines are in it for the long run. CAAFI is in it for the long run. We continue to simply try to drive to one other metric of sustainability, which is affordability. And if we, you know, achieve that, then the issue of uptake is much less of a challenge. So let me stop there.
Thank you. So Katarina, your take?
Thank you. Well, I agree with mostly what Steve is saying. I think the added value is evident of the aviation. Air travel is important, and I still believe it will be important in many, many years to come. This being said, and I know I'm sometimes a little bit radical in my sustainability views, but I think the culture and how the society works around sustainability is actually changing, and how people will interact with the aviation, this is something I'm really not sure. And I do think that when we talk about sustainability, we need to talk about the habits. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you take the airplane for literally one night to go see a concert in another country because you can, and it's cheap, it's okay, but it's not sustainable. And we shouldn't be proning this to use air travel because it can be used very differently. So the amount of carbon we could potentially explode as a sector, as an aviation sector, what are the priorities there and where are they? They are certainly are, but this is a kind of uncomfortable conversations that we should have on a very large level, I believe. But like I was saying, mainly I am agreeing with what Steve is saying. The added value is there, and they are those important needs that will need to be fulfilled in many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Katarina. Pedro?
Well, thank you, Alejandro. In the same directions that Steve and Katarina said, it doesn't matter the level the aviation will be back. It will be back, not necessarily in the same level as before. But proportionally, I think sustainability will be going to be a real issue for any airline. If it's a budget airline or a top service airline, the issue of sustainability will be a real part of the governance of the companies, and it will probably must be transparent. The initiatives of how the airline connects itself with the environment, the society, with all the values that you know that are including sustainability. So I think it's not a question if we are going in this direction or not. I think we are going in the direction of sustainability. Of course, economic, financial sustainability is important, but we're going to have a new balance between these two kinds of sustainability that we're saying. So I think sustainable aviation fuels is a huge part of the sustainability solution of an airline. because climate change emissions, it's heavy on that, and the companies will find a way to move on in this direction. So that's my point of view.
Thank you, Pedro. And Hendrik, please.
Yes, Alejandro, my view would be closest to Pedro's view. It is definitely so that that sustainability needs to play a bigger role. SAF and CO2 reduction needs to play a bigger role. But there's going to be a long struggle because, like you said, there's this financing issue. But it is really so that both the airlines and also the customers of the airlines have to cope with another status of realities where flying is going to be more expensive. But nevertheless, we need flying. Flying is a very, very important contributor of added value in the world. And it is also actually a peacekeeping mechanism because it is adding value to the international trade and adding understanding between the people. So we need it, but we need a different kind of aviation, different kind of attitude.
Thank you very much, Hendrik. So I think that it's clear we're all sustainability proponents, sustainability advocates. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, and so being respectful of both the time of our respected panelists and of the time of our attendees, we're going to go ahead and close this session. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A box related specifically to the Brazil effort. Maybe Pedro, you can help us in answering them, and we can send them to the people who asked them. As mentioned, the presentations will be in PDF format and on our website. And don't forget that this is a series. This is session 3. We will have 8 sessions of the SAFI webinar series. And so I have nothing else to say, but to thank you very much to all of you. You have been very, very incredible in lending us your expertise and your time. And so thank you very much. And we will see all of you in our next session, which is next week, on the global lessons from the projects that have been implementing sustainable aviation fuel around the world. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you
so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Alejandro. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Hendrik.